Hi everyone, my name's Christy. Welcome to my corner. Today we're in my baking corner where I'll be doing some historical baking out of my 1856 cookbook that I talked about in my first historical baking video. So if you haven't watched that one, I highly recommend watching that one first so you can get an idea of what this cookbook is about, where I got it from, and why I'm talking about a random lady throughout this video. So today we're going to be baking jumbles, and I will post the original recipe in the description below, as well as a picture right here and a converted recipe into modern measurements below. So I've already done all that work. I just have to type it up. One of my rules, I always give myself rules for things, is that I'm going to try to do it the old-fashioned way by hand. So I'm going to try to not use a mixer. We'll see how long that lasts, to be honest. I have all my ingredients right here. It is a pound of sugar, a pound of flour, 3/4 of a pound of butter, 5 eggs, and some rose water. And the butter is softened. It should probably be room temperature. And I only had unsalted butter, but I would imagine the butter from this recipe is actually salted for preservation purposes. So I did add a half teaspoon of salt to the softened butter. I hope that was not a mistake. We'll find out. So the first instruction is beat the butter and the sugar together until smooth and light. So let's do that.
Throughout the baking process, I will talk more about Hannah Mary Bouvier Peterson, the author of this cookbook. You can find the links to all of my sources, including links to her other books, in the description below if you'd like to explore them further. She was born in Philadelphia in 1811 to the prominent lawyer John Bouvier and his wife Elizabeth Whittyfield, whom I would really like to learn more about, so perhaps I'll do some digging into that family in the coming weeks. She married Robert Evans Peterson in 1834, and this marriage connected her with the Peterson family, who owned a publishing company and were the ones who printed this cookbook and her other books as well. Hannah worked with her husband in the family publishing firm and was well placed to publish her writings. So next up, I want to talk about her science textbooks because I think that they're really very interesting.
This is really hard on the arms. If I keep doing this series for very long, my right arm is going to be like the Hulk.
As I mentioned in episode 1, the writing that she was doing was varied and included a science textbook published in 1850 called Familiar Science and Bouvier's Familiar Astronomy, published in 1855, but more on those later.
I don't know. That looks smooth and creamy to me. I think we're going to call that done. Next, whisk the eggs and stir them into the butter and sugar. So I have my eggs in here, and this is my favorite whisking fork. It just has such really nice long tines. So break the yolks. Whisking these eggs is actually really hard work after doing all the butter and sugar. Okay, I put it in the bowl that I put the sugar in because it was almost impossible to whisk it and not spill it everywhere in that little glass bowl. So we're going with this. That's better. And it doesn't say they need to be frothy, so I'm assuming the point is to break up all the membranes and stuff. Because I'm pretty sure this is a dense cookie. That's whisked. I'm going to put it into the butter and sugar and mix it all around.
Her science textbook, Familiar Science, sold 250,000 copies and was used in classrooms all over the country. But today I want to focus on Bouvier's Familiar Astronomy, or An Introduction to the Study of the Heavens, which was an introductory textbook to astronomy that she dedicated to her father, which I'll talk about in a moment because the dedication is really sweet.
I think that's pretty mixed. So then it says add the rose water and the flour. I don't have any rose water, but I have some homemade rose extract. So I'm just going to put a dollop of that in, and it actually won't be too rosy, which is nice. But it'll have a little hint of rose. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. This is all an experiment for me. Okay. So I put about a teaspoon of rose extract in. And it's, like I said, it's homemade rose extract, so it's actually not as rosy as a rose extract that you buy in the store. So I'll mix that together. Okay. And now mix in the flour.
As I said, the dedication to her father is very sweet. She says that her textbook, quote, may be as unerring a guide to the young astronomer as his works have proved to the legal student is the highest aspiration of the author, unquote. As I mentioned in episode 1, Hannah's father, John Bouvier, wrote a widely used legal dictionary, so this is both praise of her father's work as well as hopes for her own. She knew publishing, so she had some ideas about how to get her books into the hands of students, and that included getting recommendations from prominent astronomers in the US and the UK. This strategy was successful, and those recommendations, along with positive book reviews in various journals, got her books into classrooms around the country. It was so popular that it had gone through 5 different printings by 1858, one of which was specifically intended to be lower cost for students.
So this is more of a thick batter than a dough. And the directions say to roll it out into a long tube and make a ring out of it and then bake it. But there's no way that this will be rolled. So I'm going to put this on a plastic wrap and put it in the fridge for about an hour. And my thought is that the butter will firm up, because the butter may have been too soft. I didn't soften the butter naturally in room temperature. I put it in the microwave, and so it may have gotten a little too soft. So I'm going to do that real quick. So that is my packet of jumble batter. I think that this is not going to work. We'll try it. I'm going to put this in the fridge for an hour and hope that it firms up enough that I can roll it out into a tube. So I'll see you then. So that took longer than an hour, but it actually worked better than I thought it was going to. I'm going to be honest, I did not think that putting it in the fridge would solidify it enough to make rings out of it, but this is a dough now. It's a soft dough, and I did 2 things wrong, I think. Number 1, I think my butter was too soft. It should be room temperature soft butter, not microwave soft butter with some liquid parts. So that's the first thing I did wrong. But the second thing I did wrong, I think, is a mistake that a lot of people who make old recipes make, and that is not considering changes in modern agriculture. Essentially, I think my eggs were too big, because 19th century chickens laid smaller eggs than 21st century chickens. So I did some research today as I was trying to think about why my dough was so not doughy and so battery. And what I discovered is that in the 19th century, the average egg was roughly 50 grams. So there were 9 eggs to a pound, and a pound is about 450 grams. So 1 egg is 50 grams. However, when I weighed my smallest egg, it was 54 grams. So I clearly just had too much egg. So the recipe conversion that I'm putting in the description box has the mistakes that I made fixed. You should be able to make this recipe without making the mistake that I did. However, chilling the dough seems to have worked.
I'll take a picture of them when they're out of the oven, but really I think I'm going to try again tomorrow with the changes to the recipe that I think will really help. And it looks like they're done.
I should have trusted my instinct. It did not work. As you can see, I'm wearing different clothes. It is the next day. The jumbles were delicious, and I dropped them off all around town. I'll insert a picture here of what they looked like on the pan, but they were not jumbles. They essentially just flattened out and they became flat cookies. Actually, I have a little bag left here, so I'll show you. We'll eat them, that's for sure. How could eggs, butter, sugar, and flour not be good? So we'll eat them, but they're not jumbles. So we're gonna try again. One thing to keep in mind, of course, is that baking is chemistry, and it's really all about ratios. So we're gonna try again using weights and using the calculations that I came up with in my research. And I'm going to have the recipe. If it works, we don't need that many Jumbles, having just made 2 sheets of random butter cookies. And also, if it doesn't work, I don't want to waste that much materials. So we're going to try to have the recipe. So what I have in front of me is I have in the bowl 225 grams of sugar and a stick and a half of butter. So I'm going to mix this up like I did before and make it creamy. I have 225 grams of all-purpose flour, and I have a little over 125 grams of eggs here that have been whisked. So I'm not going to add all the eggs. I'm going to just add some of the eggs. And then it calls for rose water, which I don't have, but I do have orange blossom water. So I'm going to put in a tablespoon of orange blossom water, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to mix this up, add the rest of the ingredients, and hopefully we will have a dough rather than a batter this time.
Now that I think I have things under control in the kitchen, let's get back to astronomy. Bouvier's familiar astronomy is organized in a question and answer format, beginning with what is astronomy and ending with how to calculate when an eclipse will occur in any given year. After the main text, there is a global history of astronomy, which includes the Indians, Egyptians, the ancient Roman woman Hypatia, who was murdered by a group of Christians, the Arabs, Persians, Mongols, and Copernicus and Galileo, but not medieval Europe, which is annoying. She also includes extensive notes, a dictionary, and an excellent index where you can search for various topics.
Okay. That is creamy. Let's see what the directions say. Let's read the directions here. Till smooth and light. One thing that I did do though that I forgot to do last night was that the butter was at room temperature. It wasn't warmed in the microwave, so there were no like liquidy bits. I'm hoping that'll help as well. And now we're going to add in most of the beaten eggs. It was about 10 grams heavier than 125. Let me go get my scale. All right, I have my scale. Then I don't have to guess. So we're going to put in 125 grams of eggs. Okay, seems like I mismeasured it the first time, so it actually was the right amount of eggs. That was 3 very small eggs. I get my eggs from a local farm, and so they vary wildly in size, which means that some eggs are probably 75 grams, and some eggs, like these guys, are more like 45 grams. I'm going to mix this up and then add the flour and the orange blossom water, and we'll see what happens. It looks about the same consistency. Let's put in the flour and see what happens. I'm going to put in a teaspoon of this rather than a tablespoon. I feel like a tablespoon is a lot. I'd rather have too little orange blossom water than too much. This is thicker, but it's still very wet. There's no way I can roll this into a ring. This is why you should read directions. I found in the front a weights and measures page. This will be very helpful going forward. It would have been helpful 20 minutes ago. So I'm going to do some quick calculations and see how far off I am, but luckily, because I did it by weight, I can add the measurements that I need. So it turns out the eggs weren't the only problem. According to this table, wheat flour, 1 quart and 1 tablespoonful equals 1 pound. That means a little over 4 cups equals a pound. And I'm saying cups because white sugar, 4 gills and a half equals 1 pound, and 4 gills equals a pint. So a pound of sugar is 2 cups of sugar, which is basically what I had, or a little over 2 cups of sugar. But a pound of flour is almost twice what I calculated for the recipe. So I weighed out 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of flour was about 350 grams, which means that this in the bowl is 125 grams short on flour. So I've measured that out. I'm going to dump it in, mix it up, and I think we may have it right. We'll find out. So this is definitely a loose dough, a wet dough, but it's a dough. I think I'm going to chill it in plastic wrap for an hour and then shape it and then bake it and see if it works. Who knows? Hi everybody. So this has been chilling now for, I would say 3 hours. I had a craft date with my mom, and so this has been chilling since then. It's really solid, which is promising. We'll see. So the recipe says to roll it into like long, 4-inch long rolls, and then turn it into a ring. And so that's what these are supposed to look like. They're also called knot cookies, I think. And so apparently a traditional way to shape them is in a pretzel shape. So I might do some circles and some pretzels. I'll just do that. So I'm going to flour the board, turn it into snakes, and roll it up and put it on my thing here.
In this final installment about Hannah's other books, in this video anyway, I want to show some awesome images that she included in her text. There are sketches of all sorts of different celestial phenomena within this main text. For example, here's a picture of a nebula that is from a sketch through a telescope, and she includes all of the constellations like Orion here that she seems really, really excited about. She even depicts the properties of light and has a picture of shadows on the moon. So take a look through the book I linked to below if you want to see more images. I think they're really cool, and I have to say I think they'd be actually really fun to embroider. But anyway, I digress. Along with the science books, Hannah also wrote another cookbook called The Young Wife's Cookbook with receipts of the best dishes for breakfast, dinner, and tea. I could talk about the history of meals and why the names of the meals are different than we use today in the US, but I think I'll save that for a different episode. For now, I want to talk about the preface of this book because you know I love a good preface. After mentioning the kinds of food that she'll discuss within the book, she says, quote, "We recommend particularly to young housekeepers a profound study of our housewifery department. The hints are not only invaluable, but have been well tried and their worth ascertained. Indeed, the contents of our whole book are entirely new, and useful information will be found upon each and every page, tending to simplify labor and to increase the comforts of every one's home." Unquote. This is followed by a stern injunction to not forget, quote, "the cultivation of the mind." I love a lady who's pro-female education in the 19th century. As someone who loves medieval conduct manuals, I really look forward to exploring this text further as we move through the recipes. And I think that's it on the history front for this video, so let's see how those jumbles turned out.
I'm going to put these in a 350-degree oven for, I don't know, 10 minutes, and we'll check in on them and see how they look. These are looking so much better than last time. I think we have a success. It looks like I made them a little bit too wide, but I call this a success. We'll see when they come out. They're out of the oven and fairly cooled. I ended up baking them at 350 for about 13 minutes, and my oven bakes slightly hot, so they're a little tinged around the outside, but overall, I would call that a jumble, my friends. This is a success. They taste really good too. They're a little bit dry, but they're supposed to be dry. The point was that they would keep for a while. Right, they're a dry cookie. This right here is about a third of the original recipe. So I think that the recipe I'm going to put down below will be a half batch because nobody needs that many jumbles. And if you want more jumbles, you can always double it. And I will put it in American cups and stuff, and also in grams, so you can find it easily. I hope you enjoyed this foray into historical baking. I'm planning on leaving in all my mistakes because I figure this is a journey, and this is part of why I wanted to do this, is to learn more about historical baking. And I think the thing that I'm going to take away from this is that you have to be careful with measurements in baking historical recipes, because the measurements have changed. And again, it's all about chemistry and percentages and ratios. So if you want to see more of either my baking or my embroidery, or I don't know, other random things that I plan on doing in this channel, please subscribe. And I really appreciate all your comments and all the nice things everyone's been saying to me. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and please, please, please take care of yourselves, and I hope you have a good one.